What if one of the greatest mysteries in human history isn't hidden, but standing right in front of us? Massive stone mountains, built by ancient hands across different continents, different cultures and different times, yet somehow they all chose the same shape: pyramids. Why? In this video, you're about to journey across deserts, jungles, and forgotten cities to uncover the deeper truth behind why ancient civilizations from Egypt to Mesopotamia, from the Maya to the Moche, felt compelled to build these monumental structures. You'll discover how pyramids weren't just buildings but stairways to the stars, symbols of power, bridges between humans and gods, and perhaps even reflections of something deeply human that connects us all. By the end, you'll see these ancient wonders not just as ruins, but as messages carved in stone, still whispering across thousands of years. And if mysteries like this spark your curiosity, take a moment to subscribe and join us, because this channel is where history's greatest questions come alive. The last light of a winter afternoon slanted through the study window, catching motes of dust in a slow golden dance. They swirled above the worn oak desk, a silent galaxy over a topography of open books and scattered notes. A single finger traced a line on a faded map, moving from the sun-baked sands of Giza to the dense jungles of Guatemala, then across oceans to the arid coast of Peru. Each location was marked with a small, deliberate dot, and from each dot, a quiet question seemed to rise like heat shimmer, filling the still room with its intangible weight. It was not a question of dates or kings, though those filled the pages. It was a simpler, deeper whisper, one that had drawn the historian into this lifelong conversation with dust and stone. Why, across continents and millennia, did human hands keep building pyramids? Outside, the world was hushed under a blanket of snow, a modern silence far removed from the cacophony of ancient quarries or the chanting of priestly processions. Yet here, surrounded by the ghosts of empires, that older world felt palpably close. The books spoke of pharaohs and astronomer priests, of sun gods and rain serpents, but their collective testimony led not to an answer, but to a profound and peaceful mystery. The pyramids stood as a chorus of stone, singing the same geometric hymn in wildly different tongues. The Great Pyramid, a flawless geometric mountain raised as a tomb and a celestial stairway. The ziggurat of a tiered temple reaching like a baked mud brick prayer towards the Mesopotamian heavens. The temple of the Great Jaguar at Tikal, a limestone crown erupting from the green jungle canopy, its steps worn by rituals under the watchful stars. The truncated platforms of the Moche, massive adobe stages for ceremonies to a thundering ocean. Each was a testament to a culture's pinnacle, and each was hauntingly, inexplicably similar. The historian leaned back, the old chair creaking a familiar complaint. The question was not about contact. No fantastical theories of lost travelers or sunken continents held sway in this quiet analysis. The evidence whispered of isolation, of cultures blooming in their own sealed gardens of time and belief. The Egyptians knew not of the Maya, the builders of never dreamed of the Andes, and yet they all chose this form. They all looked to their local stone or brick, to their mountains or their skies, and decided that the most profound expression of their faith, their power, their very understanding of the universe, was a structure that rose from a broad base to a narrow apex, a man-made mountain pointing insistently upward. Was it something inherent in the human psyche, this architectural urge, a deep-seated recognition that the triangle was the most stable of forms, both physically and spiritually? Or was it born from a universal observation, the fundamental shape of a mountain, reaching for the sky, the first and most natural altar? Perhaps it was a convergence of necessity and aspiration. The simplest way to build tall and enduring with primitive technology was to stack, to layer, to create a gradient of effort that culminated in a point of connection, a ramp for the soul, a ladder for the gods. The fading light now glowed only on the spines of the books, titles etched in gold, asterisk, the pyramid texts, asterisk, asterisk, Mesopotamian, cosmology, asterisk, asterisk, the code of the Maya, asterisk. They were not answers, but invitations. Each detailed the how, the millions of blocks quarried and dragged, the millions of mud bricks molded and baked, The intricate calendars etched in stone, the precise alignments to solstice suns and specific stars, they chronicled the immense social machinery, the thousands of lives bent to a single staggering purpose. They explained function, tomb, temple, observatory, stage, but the silent central why remained, floating serene and unanswered in the middle of the room. It was a comforting mystery, the historian thought. In an age that demanded solutions and data, the pyramids offered a different gift, wonder. They stood as reminders that the past is not a puzzle to be completely solved, but a landscape to be wandered with reverence. The shared form was not a clue to a single tidy answer, but a question posed to the ages, a question about the unity of human aspiration beneath the dazzling diversity of human culture. What common chord in the spirit of our species did these structures strike? The map on the desk seemed to pulse softly in the twilight, the dots no longer mere locations but beacons. They were calls from across time, from the banks of the Nile, the floodplains of the Tigris and Euphrates, the limestone shelves of the Yucatan, the river valleys of the Peruvian coast. They were silent, yet they asked the same silent question. The historian smiled, a small private gesture in the gathering dark. The journey through the texts was not toward a destination of certainty, but toward a deeper acquaintance with the question itself. The snow continued to fall outside, layering the modern world in a soft, clean silence, while within, the quiet conversation with the ancient builders and their magnificent, mysterious choice was just beginning. The study was not a place of conclusion, but a portal. The first step was not to answer, but to listen, to the echo of chisels, the murmur of prayers, the immense patient silence of the stones themselves. The investigation would proceed, chapter by chapter, culture by culture, not to dispel the mystery, but to inhabit it more fully, to understand the many beautiful ways in which humanity has always sought to touch the sky, and in doing so left its mark upon the earth. Asterisk. Chapter 2. Sun and Sand. Egypt's Eternal Tombs. Asterisk. The sun was a hammer on the anvil of the desert, beating the pale sands into a blinding sheet of light. From this vast flat expanse, a geometry of impossible ambition rose, a mountain crafted by men, a perfect triangular shadow stretching across the Giza plateau like a giant sundial. The Great Pyramid stood not as a mere tomb, but as a frozen hymn to eternity. Its limestone casing stones, sheathed in a brilliance that made it seem a fragment of the sun itself, fallen to earth. Its construction was a silent symphony of will, orchestrated by the divine mind of Pharaoh Khufu, a king who sought not just a burial chamber, but a celestial launchpad for his journey beyond the stars. Khufu's vision was absolute, a command written not on papyrus but on the landscape. He saw his pyramid as more than a monument. It was a machine for immortality, a device to translate his mortal flesh into an eternal star in the firmament of Osiris. Every block of stone, every precise angle, every internal passage was a syllable in a spell of stone. The pyramid's four sides aligned with the cardinal directions with an accuracy that whispered of profound astronomical knowledge, its corners pointing like fingers to the sacred rivers of the sky. Its ascending interior corridors were not just architectural features, but a mapped pathway, a stairway for the king's spirit to climb from the dark subterranean chamber of his sarcophagus, through the grand gallery's soaring incline, and finally, out into the limitless night, through the narrow vents pointed at the circumpolar stars, those eternal undying lights. To realize this vision required an ocean of quiet determination. On the plateau's eastern edge, far from the pristine silence of the finished monument, the air thrummed with a low, persistent industry. In the limestone quarries of Tura, men moved in rhythmic cadence. They were not slaves in chains, but crews of skilled labourers, farmers who came during the Nile's inundation when their fields were underwater, serving their god-king in shifts they called asterisk files. Their tools were simple: copper chisels, wooden mallets, dolerite pounding stones. Yet with these, they performed a kind of alchemy. A master quarryman would score a deep line into the bedrock, his apprentices driving wooden wedges into the seam. These wedges were soaked with water, their gradual swelling expansion creating a clean fracture with a low groaning crack that echoed like distant thunder. The liberated block, weighing more than 2 grown elephants, was then coaxed onto wooden sledges. The journey to the plateau was a saga of mud, sweat, and orchestrated motion. Teams of men hauled the sledges along prepared causeways, their chants a deep rhythmic pulse that synchronized their heaving strides. Pourers ran ahead, sloshing water from goatskins onto the path to reduce friction, the damp earth turning to a slick paste that gleamed in the harsh light. At the pyramid's growing base, the real precision began. Stonemasons, their eyes squinted against the stone dust, took charge. With string levels and flat plaster beds, they dressed each block, shaving millimeters until it fit against its neighbor with a seam so tight a razor blade could not slip between. A young mason, his hands calloused and chalk white, ran his palm over the joint he had just finished, a fleeting moment of pride swallowed by the immense scale of the work. His was a name lost to time, but his handiwork would hold for millennia. Above, on the ever-rising tiers, the engineering feats unfolded with a serene, terrifying logic. Ramp systems, great earthen spirals clinging to the pyramid's flanks, provided the highway for the ascending stones. As the pyramid grew, its internal structure became a labyrinth of stress and counter-stress. The grand gallery, with its corbelled walls soaring 28 feet high, was a masterpiece of weight distribution, a soaring prelude to the king's chamber itself. That chamber, built from monstrous blocks of red Aswan granite, housed the final hope. Here, priests performed the rituals of consecration, anointing the empty sarcophagus with sacred oils, inscribing the walls with spells from the pyramid texts, to protect and guide the king's *K*. The air was cool, still, and heavy with the scent of cedar and myrrh, a sacred void waiting to be filled. From the hot, dusty world of the laborers to the cool, incense-filled sanctum of the priests, the human element pulsed through the stone. The pyramid was a societal pyramid, every tier of labor supporting the apex where the god-king resided. The workers' settlements, with bakeries producing thousands of loaves and hospitals setting broken bones, spoke of a communal effort, a shared belief in the project's divine purpose. They built not under a lash, but under a shared celestial imperative. At sunset, when the long shadows of the incomplete monument stretched to the horizon, a priest might climb a temporary scaffold to perform the evening rite. He would raise his hands not to the pyramid, but past its peak, to the first emerging stars in the violet east. The pyramid was merely the vessel, the mountain, the ramp. Its true purpose was directional, a colossal arrow shot from the heart of Egypt toward the realm of the imperishable. As the last light gilded the summit, the immense structure seemed to shed its weight of stone, becoming a luminous conduit, a silent promise written across 46 centuries that death was not an end, but a glorious stellar ascent. The workers below would look up, their faces lit by cooking fires, seeing not just their day's toil, but the silhouette of a collective dream against the darkening sky, a dream of eternity, carved in limestone and ambition. Chapter 3, Between Rivers, the Ziggurats of Ur. In the land between the twin rivers, where the Tigris and Euphrates carved a fertile cradle from the dust, the horizon was a flat line interrupted only by date palms and the low walls of sun-dried brick. Yet at the heart of the city of Ur, a mountain was being born from the earth itself, not of stone but of clay and straw, a colossal stairway of baked mud ascending in 3 massive, receding tiers toward the blinding dome of the sky. This was the ziggurat, the house of the moon god Nana, a temple designed not as a tomb for a single king, but as a permanent bridge between the realm of humans and the domain of the divine. Its construction was an act of collective prayer, a slow, deliberate stacking of the very soil of Mesopotamia into a form that would lift priestly whispers into the celestial winds. The vision belonged to King Ur-Nammu, who saw in this structure the ultimate expression of his sacred duty as the god's steward on earth. The ziggurat was to be the axis mundi, the fixed point around which the cosmos turned, its corners aligned with the cardinal points, its height a measure of human aspiration. Unlike the solid, inward-focused pyramid of Giza, the ziggurat was an open invitation, its sides scored by 3 monumental staircases that converged at a summit shrine, a place where heaven and earth met. It was built not from quarried limestone, but from the alluvial plain itself, in brickfields along the riverbanks. An endless cycle of creation unfolded. Workers dug thick clay from the canals, mixing it with chopped straw and water in pits where their feet churned the slurry into a cohesive mass. This mud was then packed into wooden molds, forming thousands upon thousands of identical bricks, each bearing the stamp of the king, a seal of devotion and authority. These bricks were laid not by slaves, but by citizens fulfilling their corvée labor, a religious and civic duty. They worked in crews, passing bricks hand over hand, up growing ramps of compacted earth. The architectural innovation was in the terracing. The core was a solid mass of mud brick, but the facing was a skin of fired, bitumen-glazed bricks, a deep, lustrous blue-black to repel the rare rains and gleam under the sun. Each tier was set back from the one below, creating a series of vast, flat terraces. These were not merely structural, they were symbolic stages, each level representing a different sphere of existence from the earthly plane to the heavenly firmament. The ascent was a spiritual journey made physical. On the day of the foundation ritual, the community gathered. Priests in long, fringed robes led a procession of artisans, officials, and laborers. They carried not tools, but offerings. Figurines of the king molded from precious metals, copper foundation pegs, and tablets inscribed with prayers, all to be buried in the core of the first course. As the chief priest chanted invocations to Enki, god of wisdom and foundations, these items were placed in a small brick-lined pit. This act consecrated the ground, transforming a construction site into holy land. Then the work began in earnest, a quiet, rhythmic endeavor that spanned years. The sound was not the crack of stone, but the soft slap of wet mortar and the scrape of bricks being settled into place. As the tiers rose, the city below seemed to recede, the mud brick houses shrinking into a patterned carpet. The labor was arduous under the relentless sun, but it was infused with a sense of shared purpose. Water carriers moved through the ranks, offering ladles from swollen skins. Overseers checked alignment with taut, water-filled reed levels. The collaboration was silent, efficient, a well-practiced liturgy of labor. Women from the city brought baskets of dates and flatbread to the site, their presence a reminder that this mountain was being built by and for the entire community, a testament to their collective piety and their king's favor with the gods. Once the final tier was complete, and the summit shrine built, a small exquisite chamber of blue glaze and cedar, the priests began their true work. At dawn, a solemn procession would form at the ziggurat's base. The high priest, his head anointed with sesame oil, would begin the climb, followed by attendants carrying incense burners that trailed fragrant smoke. Their ascent was slow, deliberate, a meditation on each step. They did not rush. The journey was the ritual. Reaching the first great terrace, they might pause, circling its perimeter in a silent circumambulation, before beginning the climb to the next tier. The higher they went, the more the mundane world fell away, until only the wind and the vast expanse of the plain remained. At the summit, in the god's empty house, the ritual reached its climax. The priest would enter the shrine alone. There was no idol, for Nana was the moon itself, but the space was charged with his presence. The priest would place offerings on a simple altar, grain, oil, a perfect white lamb. He would then step to the parapet, his robe snapping in the high, clean wind. From this vantage, he was the literal link between domains. Below lay the ordered world of humans, the grid of canals, the fields of barley, the smoke of hearths. Above stretched the infinite, star-strewn vault of Anu, the sky god. The priest raised his arms, his voice carrying the city's prayers upward, a human conduit channeling devotion from the fertile mud of the earth to the distant, cool light of the celestial gods. The ziggurat, in that moment, was not a building but a function, a colossal antenna for the human spirit. Its mud-brick bulk, so solid and earthly, became ethereal, a ladder upon which the collective soul of could climb, seeking communion, seeking order, seeking a promise of continued life from the waters above and the waters below. As the moon rose, silvering the glazed bricks, the structure seemed to shimmer, a man-made mountain holding fast in the riverine night, a testament to the enduring human desire to build a highway from the soil of home to the mysteries of the heavens. Asterisk. Asterisk. Chapter 4. Green Stone. The Mayan Pyramids of Tikal. Asterisk. Asterisk. The jungle did not simply surround Tikal. It was a living, breathing entity that pressed in from all sides, a sea of emerald green, punctuated by the cries of howler monkeys and the shrieks of scarlet macaws. From this verdant chaos, the pyramids rose like stone islands, their limestone faces pale against the dense canopy, their summits piercing the low-hanging clouds. The greatest of them, the Temple of the Great Jaguar, stood as the axis of this world, a man-made mountain whose steps were worn smooth by the feet of priests and the passage of centuries. On this day, the air itself seemed to thicken with anticipation, for the sun was nearing its solstice pause, and Venus hung as a brilliant morning star in the eastern sky, a celestial alignment that demanded ceremony, sacrifice and communion. Within the shadowed corridors of the temple complex, the high priest Great Jaguar prepared. His body was painted with intricate patterns of black and red, symbols of the sun's journey and the blood of sacrifice. A headdress of quetzal feathers, iridescent green and impossibly long, rose from his brow like a plume of sacred smoke. In his hands, he held an obsidian mirror, its surface polished to a liquid darkness capable of capturing reflections of the spirit world. Around him, the city stirred with a quiet, ordered purpose. Incense burners sent coils of copal resin smoke into the humid air, the sweet pine-like scent mingling with the earthy perfume of wet soil and blooming orchids. The pyramids were not tombs here, but portals, cosmological machines engineered with breathtaking astronomical precision to sync the rhythm of human life with the grand ticking clock of the heavens. The construction of these structures had been a dialogue with the stars. Centuries earlier, astronomer priests had charted the cycles of Venus, the wanderings of Mars, and the precise points of the solstice sun, with an accuracy that still defied easy understanding. The temples were positioned accordingly. The Temple of the Great Jaguar faced west, its summit aligned so that on the equinox, the setting sun would cast a shadow along its northern stairway in a perfect descending serpent of light and dark, a manifestation of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent deity. The entire plaza was a calibrated observatory, where the movements of celestial bodies were not merely observed but enacted upon the terrestrial stage. The pyramids were the fixed points in this cosmic dance, their heights offering a vantage to read the sky as one might read a sacred text. As the first true light of dawn began to bleed into the indigo sky, Great Jaguar emerged from the temple precinct. He began his ascent of the main pyramid, a climb of over 70 steep, narrow steps. Each step was a progression from the profane world below toward the sacred zenith. Attendants followed at a respectful distance, carrying bundles of blessed copal and vessels of water drawn from the hidden guardas, the life-giving reservoirs carved into the limestone bedrock. The climb was arduous, a physical ordeal that mirrored the spiritual journey. The priest's breath came in measured pulls, his focus inward, his mind reaching ahead to the summit where earth met sky. Below, the vast great plaza slowly revealed itself. The companion temples, the broad acropolises, the ball court where ritual games echoed the cosmic struggle between light and dark. The city was a mirror of the Mayan cosmos, with the pyramid as the world tree, its roots in the underworld of Xibalba, its trunk in the middle world of men, and its branches in the heavens. Reaching the summit sanctuary, a small corbel vaulted chamber topped with a towering roof comb, the priest entered a realm of stone and wind. The sanctuary was empty, but for a low altar. Here the astronomical precision became personal, immediate. Great Jaguar positioned himself at the eastern edge. As the sun's first blinding rim broke the horizon, a shaft of light speared through the precise doorway, illuminating the dark interior floor and striking a specific marker stone. Simultaneously, to the southeast, the brilliant point of Venus gleamed just above the peak of Temple 4. The alignment was perfect, a fleeting celestial geometry that validated the entire ritual calendar, the king's divine right to rule, and the covenant between the people and the gods. The pyramid had functioned flawlessly as its builders intended, a stone instrument catching the first notes of the solar symphony. The moment of alignment was also the moment for the sacrificial ritual. The sacrifice was not an act of cruelty, but one of profound reciprocity, a necessary offering of life force to sustain the cosmic order. A captive, chosen for his strength and vitality, was led up the pyramid steps. The atmosphere was serene, charged with a solemn gravity. There was no anger, only a deep ritual necessity. At the summit, under the now rising sun, the captive was laid upon the altar. Great Jaguar raised an obsidian blade, its edge sharper than any metal. The act was swift, a single practiced motion. The blood, considered the most potent sustenance for the gods, was collected in a ceremonial bowl. The priest then anointed the temple's corners with the vital fluid, feeding the stones, renewing the pact. The body was carefully prepared for descent. Even in death, it served the community, its remains treated with a respect that acknowledged its role in the cycle of renewal. As the ceremony concluded, the priest stood alone at the pinnacle. The jungle stretched to every horizon, an unbroken tapestry of green. The morning mists coiled around the temple bases like serpents. From this height, Tikal was revealed not as a city conquering the jungle, but as an extension of it, a stone echo of the surrounding hills, a human-made mountain integrated into a living landscape. The pyramid was the center of power, cosmology, and calm. It channeled the fearsome, chaotic power of nature into ordered ritual. It translated the silent movements of planets into a language of authority and stability. The serene yet mysterious atmosphere settled back over the city. The howler monkeys resumed their chorus, the macaws flashed between trees, and the steam began to rise from the wet canopy. Below, the people went about their day, secure in the knowledge that the priest on the pyramid had once again aligned their world with the heavens, ensuring the sun would rise, the rains would come, and the great green world would endure. The temple of the Great Jaguar stood silent once more, a limestone prayer frozen in time, its purpose fulfilled until the next celestial trigger, a testament to a civilization that sought not to defy nature, but to weave its human aspirations into the very fabric of the cosmos. Asterisk. Chapter 5. Hidden Altars. The Moche Pyramids of Peru. Asterisk. On the stark, rainless coast of northern Peru, where the desert met the thunderous Pacific in a perpetual contest of brown and blue, the pyramids rose not as peaks but as colossal platforms, massive altars built from the earth itself. They were not tombs for the dead, but stages for the living, the sacred theatres of the Moche, a people who forged a dazzling civilization in profound isolation. Their gaze turned not to the stars, but to the life-giving and terrifying ocean. The Huaca del Sol and Huaca de la Luna, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, dominated the Moche River Valley, their vast adobe bulk standing as twin expressions of elite power, divine ceremony, and a social cohesion woven from ritual, artistry, and awe. Construction here was a matter of mud and patience, a slow accretion of millions upon millions of adobe bricks. Unlike the quarried stone of Egypt or the fired bricks of Mesopotamia, the Moche medium was the very desert floor, mixed with water from the seasonal rivers. In sprawling workshops near the site, laborers prepared the bricks in wooden molds, each one bearing the distinctive mark of its maker, a fingerprint, a symbol, a simple line, a quiet signature lost in the multitude. These marked bricks were not mere building blocks. They were units of labor, tokens of tribute from different communities across the valley, their varied symbols allowing overseers to track contributions. The pyramids grew in phases, each new ruler or priestly generation adding a layer, encasing the old structure like a series of nesting boxes. The result was a mountain of sun-dried mud, its sides sloped and reinforced against the rare but catastrophic El Niño rains, its surface once plastered and painted in vivid murals of deities and mythic scenes. The purpose of these structures was intensely communal, yet strictly hierarchical. The Huaca de la Luna, nestled at the foot of a barren sclera, served as the primary ceremonial center. Its terraced platforms were not for public ascent, but for elite display, a sacred backdrop against which the drama of Moche cosmology was performed. Artisan workshops nestled in the shadow of the pyramids hummed with specialized activity. Master potters shaped clay into exquisite stirrup spout vessels depicting gods, warriors, and erotic scenes with photorealistic detail. Metalworkers smelted copper and gold in clay furnaces, crafting intricate nose ornaments, ear spools, and ceremonial knives called tumis. Textile artists wove cotton and alpaca wool into tapestries of complex symbolism. This concentration of craftsmanship was not merely economic, it was spiritual. The objects produced here were used in the rituals that took place on the pyramid, each a conduit for divine power, each reinforcing the authority of the elite, who controlled their production and distribution. The rituals themselves centered on the ocean and the fertility it governed. The Moche's principal deity was Peka, the decapitator, a fearsome god often depicted as a fanged, tentacled being from the deep, associated with mountains, water, and sacrifice. Another key figure was the moon goddess, who ruled over weather, growth, and the female realm. To ensure the flow of marine bounty, the anchoveta that sustained the population, and to petition for life-giving water from the distant Andes, the priests performed elaborate ceremonies on the pyramid's summit plaza. These were not quiet prayers, but potent, multi-sensory spectacles designed to bind the community together and demonstrate the elite's unique role as intermediaries with the capricious forces of nature. On a day appointed by lunar and seasonal cycles, the plaza atop the Huaca de la Luna would be prepared. Fresh clay plaster was applied to the walls, painted with new murals showing Peka in his power. The air grew thick with the smoke of burning shellfish and the scent of spilled chicha, a fermented maize beer. Dignitaries and priests, adorned in glittering gold and feathered regalia, took their places on the terraces. The common people gathered in the vast plaza below, their faces upturned. The ceremony unfolded with a solemn, terrifying gravity. Prisoners of war, often captured in ritual battles, were led up the ramp systems. At the climax, under the watchful eyes of the fanged god's image, the priests would enact the central myth. A high-ranking captive, perhaps a warrior from a rival valley, was rendered a potent offering. His blood was collected in ceremonial cups, offered to the deities, and smeared on the pyramid walls, feeding the very structure with life force. His body was then cast down the steep side of the platform. This act was not mere brutality, it was a profound cosmological transaction, a renewal of the contract between the people, their rulers, and the deities who controlled the ocean's harvest and the mountain's water. The cultural isolation of the Moche makes their pyramidal complexes all the more striking. With no known contact with Mesoamerica or the Old World, their choice of this monumental form speaks to a fundamental human response to environment and belief. The pyramids served as anchors in a landscape defined by extremes: the barren desert, the fertile river oasis, the unpredictable roaring sea. They provided a fixed point of human order, a place where society's hierarchies were made visible and its fears were ritually managed. The Huaca del Sol, possibly an administrative palace, and the Huaca de la Luna, the ceremonial heart, worked in tandem, projecting a unified authority across the valley. The pyramids were instruments of social cohesion, their construction and rituals mobilizing the entire population around a shared spiritual and economic purpose. They demonstrated that the elite could commune with the gods, could ensure the anchoveta ran and the rivers flowed, thereby justifying their privileged position. As a ceremony concluded, the setting sun would bathe the adobe bricks in a deep bloody gold. The priests descended, their regalia put away. The artisans in their workshops cleaned their tools. The fishermen on the coast cast their nets. The pyramid, its latest sacrificial offering absorbed into its fabric, stood silent once more, a massive mud brick altar holding the prayers and the power of a people who looked to the thunderous Pacific and saw not a barrier but a deity, and who built their mountains of earth to meet it, to plead with it, and to assert their place in its demanding, life-sustaining realm. In their isolation, the Moche had arrived at the same architectural solution as civilizations a world away: a raised platform, a sacred high place, where humanity could perform the necessary rituals to keep their fragile world in balance. Chapter 6. The Hands That Built Across the deserts, between the rivers, and deep within the emerald jungles, the grand visions of pharaohs, priest-kings, and divine rulers were given form, not by gods but by hands. calloused, cracked, and dusted with limestone powder or caked in river mud. These were the hands that quarried, molded, lifted, and fitted. They belonged to men whose names history never recorded, whose individual stories dissolved into the collective endeavor. Yet in the quiet rhythm of their daily labor, in the shared strain and the occasional moment of pride felt at a perfect joint or a smoothly laid course, lay the true heartbeat of the pyramids. This was the human constant, the craftsman, the laborer, the anonymous builder, whose silent toil across cultures erected the mysteries that would later baffle scholars. In the Egyptian quarries of Tura, the work began at dawn, the coolness of the desert night still clinging to the stone. A crew chief, his skin leathered by the sun, examined a seam in the creamy limestone bedrock. With a copper chisel and a wooden mallet, he began scoring a deep groove, his strikes measured and precise, each tap sending a sharp asterisk tinking, asterisk echoing off the quarry walls. His apprentices watched, then moved in with wooden wedges, hammering them into the scored line. The wedges were soaked with water from a clay pot. Then they waited. There was no rushing this process. The men sat in the shade of a nearby cliff, sharing a coarse loaf of bread and a skin of beer, their conversation low and practical, the yield of a vineyard, a child's fever. Their patience was a form of skill. Hours later, a low, groaning crack would signal the stone's surrender. The block was born, a perfect rectangular giant. Using ropes and levers, they coaxed it onto a wooden sledge. The chief mason ran his hand along the fresh fracture, his fingertips reading the stone's quality. It was good. It would hold the weight of eternity. A world away, in the alluvial plains of Mesopotamia, the medium was not stone but earth. In brickfields along the Euphrates, the process was one of transformation from mud to monument. Workers, their legs coated in grey slurry, trod endless circles in mixing pits, churning the clay with chopped straw and canal water until it reached a thick plastic consistency. The smell was dank and fertile. Nearby, others packed the mud into wooden molds, smoothing the tops with a wet palm before flipping the molds to release a damp brown brick. Each bore the mark of its maker, a thumbprint, a fishbone pattern, a simple cross. These marks were not signatures of artistry, but of accountability, a way for overseers to tally the tribute of labor from different villages. The bricks were laid in the sun, row upon row, thousands of them, drying into hardness under the relentless sky. A young laborer, perhaps on his first season of corvée duty, would glance at the growing ziggurat in the distance, then back at the endless field of his bricks. The connection was abstract, vast. His world was the mud under his feet, the weight of the mold, the ache in his lower back, yet his bricks would climb toward heaven. In the humid lowlands of the Maya, the material was limestone, but the craftsmanship was of a different character. At Tikal, quarries were often simply the sites of the buildings themselves, the stone extracted from great pits that would later become ceremonial reservoirs. The Mayan artisan was often a sculptor, as well as a mason. With church punches and basalt hammers, they shaped the rough blocks, not into perfect geometric cubes, but into facing stones that would fit the complex curves of a corbel-vaulted temple roof. The work was finer, more intricate. A carver might spend days on a single decorative element for a roof comb, a stylized mask of the rain god Chark, its curling fangs and crossed eyes emerging slowly from the stone under his persistent, careful taps. The dust here was white and fine, settling in the lines of his face. He worked, not in a roaring quarry, but in a dedicated workshop near the temple base, surrounded by the chips of his labor, the image in his mind's eye gradually becoming manifest in the world. His pride was in the detail, in the knowledge that his god's visage would gaze out over the jungle from the highest point. Their tools were extensions of their bodies and their eras. The Egyptian's copper chisel, constantly resharpened on a whetstone, was a luxury of a metal-working culture. The Mesopotamian's brick mold was a simple wooden frame, technology unchanged for millennia. The Mayan's obsidian blade, sharper than surgical steel but brittle, was a product of volcanic fire and long-distance trade. Yet with these simple instruments, they achieved tolerances that still inspire wonder. They used levels made of water-filled troughs and plumb lines of string and stone. They employed measuring cords knotted at precise intervals. Geometry was not abstract theory, but applied knowledge, passed from master to apprentice on the job, a language of right angles and proportions spoken with gestures and grunts. Their daily lives were defined by the rhythm of the project. In the workers' town near Giza, the baker's oven produced thousands of loaves daily. The fish from the Nile were salted and stored. The scribes tallied rations of grain and beer. A broken arm was set by a medic in a clinic, the patient returning to light duty after weeks of recovery. In Mesopotamia, labourers returned to their own homes in Ur after their shift, their duty to the god and the king fulfilled for the season. In Tikal, the artisans likely lived in specialised districts, their status higher than that of the farmers who supplied the maize and beans. Despite the vast differences in culture and belief, a shared reality bound them. The sun's arc measured the workday, the need for water and food was constant, and the collective goal imposed a discipline that structured their entire existence. And within that discipline, there were moments of quiet, personal satisfaction. The Egyptian stonemason feeling the seamless join between two multi-ton blocks, knowing his work would never be seen but would hold forever. The Mesopotamian bricklayer, seeing his distinctive mark, a simple circle on a course halfway up the second terrace, a tiny signature swallowed by the scale but known to him. The Mayan carver stepping back to see the completed chalk mask catch the late afternoon light, its features now alive, a conduit for divine favour. These moments were not about glory or legacy, they were the intrinsic rewards of craftsmanship, the silent conversation between a worker and his material, between effort and form. They built because they were told to, because it was their duty, their tax, their religious obligation, but they also built because they could. The human capacity to envision a shape in raw material, and then through sustained coordinated effort to bring that shape into being, is a profound constant. The pyramid was the ultimate expression of this capacity. It required every type of hand, the brute strength of the quarryman, the precise skill of the mason, the patient repetition of the bricklayer, the artistic vision of the carver. It was a symphony of labour, where the individual note was lost in the chord, yet each was essential. When the last block was set, the final brick laid, the ultimate mask carved, the builders moved on. They returned to their fields, their homes, their other trades. The monuments they left behind would be claimed by kings and gods, interpreted by priests and astronomers, marvelled at by future ages. But the first truth of the pyramids was this: they were built. They rose from the earth not by magic, but by the accumulated effort of countless ordinary days, by the simple, profound act of one hand placing one stone upon another, again and again, until a mountain stood, where before there was only flat earth or tangled jungle. The shared experience was not in the why, which varied so dramatically from culture to culture, but in the how, in the sweat, the skill, the quiet pride, and the collective human breath that hung, invisible and enduring, in the spaces between the stones. The hands have turned to dust, but their work remains, a testament not merely to power or faith, but to the enduring ability of common hands to achieve the uncommon, to lift the dreams of their age, stone by heavy stone, toward the waiting sky. Asterisk, asterisk, Chapter 7, Stars and Spirits, asterisk, asterisk. The night sky over the Giza Plateau was a vast black dome dusted with cold fire. To a modern eye it was a spectacle of random beauty, but to the priest astronomers of the 4th dynasty, it was a meticulously ordered map, a divine blueprint etched in light. Their great stone mountain, the Pyramid of Khufu, was not merely aligned to the cardinal directions, it was a terrestrial echo of a celestial pattern. Its 2 narrow air shafts angling upward from the heart of the king's chamber did not vent air but vision, one pointed directly to the north, targeting the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones that never set, the eternal destination for the pharaoh's soul. The other aimed precisely at the belt of the constellation Orion, which the Egyptians saw as Sa, the celestial embodiment of Osiris, god of death and resurrection. The pyramid was a machine built to catch starlight, to tether the king's spirit to these fixed points in the turning vault, ensuring his rebirth among the undying lights. It was a portal built of limestone, its geometry a key to a cosmic lock. Half a world away, and millennia later, Atop the temple of the Great Jaguar at Tikal, the sky told a different story with the same architectural grammar. Here, the cosmos was not a static map, but a dynamic, ticking clock. The Maya did not just observe the heavens, they conversed with them. Their pyramids were precisely oriented to act as giant calendrical instruments. The stairways and doorways were aligned so that on the equinoxes, the setting sun would cast a serpentine shadow slithering down the northern balustrade, a manifestation of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. The summit platforms served as observation decks where priest astronomers tracked the complex cycles of Venus, the morning and evening star, whose appearances and disappearances dictated the timing of war and sacrifice. The pyramid was a stone register, its position and form encoding the rhythms of planets and solstices, a permanent interface between the earthly realm and the celestial machinery that governed time, fate, and fertility. In Mesopotamia, the relationship was more intimate, a mirroring. The ziggurat of Ura, with its 3 colossal tiers and 3 staircases, was a model of the cosmos. Each level corresponded to a known sphere of existence, the earthly plane, the middle heavens, and the highest dome of the god Anu, but its alignment also mirrored planetary movements. The ascent of the priest up the stairways was a ritual reenactment of the journey of the moon god Nana across the sky. The structure's orientation and its terraced form reflected a cosmology where the universe itself was conceived as a layered, ascending structure. The ziggurat was a pivot around which the sky turned, a fixed axis mundi that brought celestial order down to the human scale, allowing the priests to climb, quite literally, into the realm of planetary influence to plead for favourable winds and seasonal floods. This profound celestial choreography was never mere science, it was the essence of spirituality. The pyramid, in all its forms, was conceived as a conduit, a place where the boundary between the human and the divine grew thin. For the Egyptians, it channeled the pharaoh's ka upward. For the Maya, it focused and amplified ritual energy, a lightning rod for prayers aimed at coaxing rain from the gods. For the Mesopotamians, it was a literal stairway for the priest to ascend and stand closer to the ears of the deities. The shared shape, the broad stable base tapering to a point, was inherently symbolic of ascent, of concentration, of a journey from the profane multiplicity of the earth to the singular, transcendent apex of heaven. These structures were batteries for spiritual aspiration, their very angles designed to funnel human devotion skyward. The celestial alignments also served a profoundly practical, yet sacred purpose. They were calendars of stone. In a world without printed almanacs, the pyramid was a permanent, immutable record of cosmic cycles. The Egyptians used the alignment of the Great Pyramid's sides to mark the solstices and equinoxes with shadow plays across the plateau. The Maya used sightlines from one pyramid to another to pinpoint the extreme positions of the sun, the so-called solar zenith passages that divided their year. The Moche, though less focused on stars, aligned their Huaca del Sol with the Cerro Blanco mountain, a landmark tied to solar and lunar events governing the agricultural and fishing cycles. By marking these cycles, the pyramids did more than tell time, they enacted it. They embedded the rhythm of the cosmos into the ritual life of the community, making the passage of seasons and years a participatory sacred drama. This union of astronomy and belief created landscapes charged with meaning. The Giza complex, with its 3 major pyramids, is now understood to mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt with stunning accuracy. Walking through the silent ruins of Teotihuacan in Mexico, one moves down the Avenue of the Dead, flanked by massive pyramidal platforms, on a path deliberately aligned with the Pleiades star cluster as it set on the horizon. At Chichen Itza, during the equinox, the play of light and shadow on El Castillo creates the illusion of a serpent descending the pyramid's stairway, an event that draws thousands to witness this ancient stone calendar, still keeping perfect time. These were not coincidences, but the core of the design. The architects sought to anchor their mortal creations to the perceived permanence of the heavens, to make their temples part of the cosmic order itself. The spiritual belief woven through these alignments was one of interconnection and responsibility. The cosmos was not a separate, indifferent realm. It was a living, responsive entity. A misaligned pyramid, a neglected solstice ceremony, could disrupt the delicate balance. The precise orientation was therefore an act of worship and maintenance. By building a structure that mirrored the heavens or marked their turning points, the ancients were actively sustaining the universe, ensuring the sun would rise, the rains would fall, and the cycle of life would continue. The pyramid was a tool of cosmic stewardship, a testament to the human role as a participant in, not just an observer of, the divine order. From the cold, clear alignment of Giza's air shafts to the dynamic shadow play of Chichen Itza, the message etched in stone and starlight is consistent. These cultures, separated by oceans and epochs, all looked upward and saw not emptiness, but a realm of immense power and pattern. They then looked to their local landscapes, and with a shared architectural intuition, built mountains to meet it. The pyramids were their observatories, their calendars, their prayer amplifiers, and their portals. They stand as perhaps the most profound evidence of a universal human yearning to locate oneself within the cosmos, to find a fixed point in the turning heavens, and to build a bridge, solid, enduring, and pointed irrevocably upward, between the earthly home and the star-dusted realm of the spirits. In their silent, geometric dialogue with the night sky, they answer the silent question not with a fact, but with a feeling, a deep, abiding conviction that we are not alone under the stars, but in conversation with them, and that some conversations require a mountain of stone to properly begin. Asterisk. Chapter 8. Power in Stone. From the sun-scorched sands of Egypt to the mist-shrouded jungles of Mesoamerica, the pyramids rose not merely as feats of engineering or acts of devotion, but as profound declarations of power. They were the ultimate political statements, carved in limestone, molded from mud brick, and stacked from adobe monuments that made abstract authority visible, tangible, and eternal. Each culture expressed its unique social contract through this shared form, yet the message was universally clear. Here stands order, hierarchy, and control, emanating from a single apex down through every tier of society to the broad supporting base. The pyramid was both a symbol and an instrument of rule, a machine for mobilizing economies, reinforcing social stratification, and projecting dominance across the landscape in a serene, unassailable silence. In Egypt, power was absolute, singular, and divine. The pharaoh was not just a king, he was the living incarnation of Horus, the god of kingship, and the son of Ra, the sun god. His pyramid, therefore, was not a personal tomb but a state project of cosmic significance. The construction of the Great Pyramid under Khufu was the ultimate expression of this theocratic autocracy. Every aspect of Egyptian society was bent toward this endeavor. The annual inundation of the Nile, which left farmers idle, provided a vast seasonal labor force that could be mobilized not as slaves, but as citizens fulfilling a religious duty to their god-king. The state bureaucracy, with its scribes and overseers, organized the quarrying, transport and construction with meticulous efficiency, distributing rations of bread, beer, and fish from centralized granaries and bakeries. The pyramid complex itself, with its valley temple, causeway, and mortuary temple, was a stage for the perpetual cult of the deceased pharaoh, ensuring his divine power continued to bless the land. The monument's flawless geometry and celestial alignment visually demonstrated the pharaoh's perfect control over both the earthly and cosmic realms. It told every subject, from the highest vizier to the humblest farmer, that their world was ordered, stable, and directed from a single godly pinnacle. The pyramid was the physical manifestation of Smart, the cosmic order of truth, balance, and harmony that the pharaoh was sworn to uphold. Its silent, imposing presence on the horizon was a constant reminder that chaos was kept at bay by this singular, concentrated power. In Mesopotamia, power was shared, a delicate negotiation between the earthly and the divine. The ruler was not a god himself, but the priest-king, the steward of the city's patron deity. The ziggurat of built by King Namu, embodied this dual authority. It was a temple first, the literal house of the moon god Nana. Its construction was a communal act of piety, with bricks contributed by various communities across the kingdom, each marked with their unique symbol. This created a tangible network of obligation and tribute, tying the periphery to the center. The priest-king's authority derived from his unique role as the intermediary who climbed the ziggurat's stairways to commune with the god. His power was thus legitimized not by birth alone, but by his exclusive access to the divine will, which he then interpreted to govern the people. The ziggurat's towering presence in the flat river plain was a beacon of this sacred contract. It projected an authority based on spiritual necessity and collective consent. The society was hierarchical, with a sharp elite of priests, administrators and warriors, but the pyramid temple stood as a symbol that this hierarchy was sanctioned by the heavens, designed to ensure the gods continued to provide the life-giving floods of the Tigris and Euphrates. Power flowed down from the summit shrine, through the priest-king, to the organized layers of society that supported the entire spiritual economic system. In the Mayan world of city-states like Tikal, power was dynastic, cyclical, and intimately tied to the cosmos. The pyramid temples were the stage for the performance of royal authority. A king like Jasor Chan Kwayil, who built the Temple of the Great Jaguar, used the structure to cement his legacy and his lineage's divine right to rule. The pyramid served multiple reinforcing functions. It was an astronomical observatory that proved the king's privileged knowledge of celestial cycles. It was a sacred theatre for rituals of blood, sacrifice that demonstrated his ability to nourish the gods and maintain the world. And it was a towering statement of military and economic might. Construction required control over vast resources, quarries, labor, artisan workshops, and the ability to marshal them over decades. The pyramid's height, literally and figuratively, elevated the king above everyone else, placing him closer to the gods and further from the common people in the plaza below. Its elaborate sculptural programs depicting the king as a warrior or shaman in communion with deities were propaganda in stone, narrating a story of divine sanction and inevitable authority. The Maya pyramids, often built over the tombs of revered ancestors, physically connected the living ruler to a powerful lineage, creating a dynasty in stone. They projected authority, not just over people, but over the very landscape, their peaks piercing the jungle canopy to declare human order amidst natural chaos. Beyond these specific expressions, pyramids universally functioned as engines of economic mobilization and social organization. They required the systematic extraction and movement of resources on a colossal scale. This necessitated the development of advanced administrative systems, taxation, labor corvées, supply networks that strengthened the central state's reach into every village and household. The Pyramid Project created a shared, unifying purpose that could integrate diverse communities and social classes into a single hierarchical endeavor. The very process of building reinforced the social pyramid. The elite designed and orchestrated, skilled artisans and overseers managed, and a vast base of laborers executed the physical toil. Everyone had a prescribed place, and the monumental result visually cemented that place into the environment. The projection of authority across the landscape was both practical and psychological. A pyramid was always the tallest structure for miles, visible across deserts, above floodplains, or above jungle canopies. It was a permanent, immovable claim on the territory. It communicated to rivals and subjects alike. The power here is organized, enduring, and capable of bending nature to its will. It created a sacred geography, making the ruler's seat the axis mundi, the center of the world. This projection was serene, not frantic, a calm assertion of permanence. There was no need for loud proclamations when a mountain of stone spoke so clearly. Reflecting on this legacy of control, one finds a profound duality. These structures, born of concentrated power, often built by the many for the few, have outlasted the empires and dynasties they were meant to glorify. The pharaoh's absolute divinity, the priest-king's sacred contract, the Mayan lord's dynastic claim, all have faded into history. Yet the pyramids remain. Their power has subtly transmuted. They no longer project the authority of a single ruler, but have come to symbolize the enduring capabilities of human civilization itself. They speak of the human capacity for collective action, for long-term vision, and for imprinting order upon the world. The legacy they embody is no longer one of control over subjects, but of humanity's brief, brave struggle against entropy, a struggle to create something that whispers of order into the silent, patient ear of time. The very stones intended to project one kind of power now project another. The quiet, humbling power of human aspiration, a testament that the most enduring forms of control are not those exerted over people, but those achieved over stone, over space, and over the relentless tide of forgetting. The pyramids stand as serene, neutral witnesses, their original purpose of reinforcing hierarchy, now softened by ages, leaving behind the pure geometry of ambition, a lesson in how the instruments of temporal power can, through the alchemy of centuries, become monuments to the timeless human spirit. Asterisk. Asterisk. Chapter 9. The Echo in Modern Eyes. Asterisk. Asterisk. The desert wind at Giza carried a new sound, not the ancient slap of mortar or the groan of sledges, but the soft whisk of a fine brush against sun-warmed limestone. Dr. Eleanor Vance knelt in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, her fingers carefully clearing grains of sand from a fissure in the bedrock. Her world was one of meticulous detail, a scatter of pottery shards, a discoloration in the soil, the microscopic wear on a stone tool. Around her, the plateau hummed with quiet, methodical activity. Colleagues mapped subsurface anomalies with ground-penetrating radar, its screen painting ghostly geometries beneath the sand. A conservator nearby worked with a syringe and solvent, stabilizing a fragment of an Old Kingdom inscription. The modern quest to understand the pyramids was not one of grand revelation, but of patient accretion, a gathering of whispers in the hope they might one day form a coherent sentence. Half a world away, at Teotihuacan under the fierce Mexican sun, another team moved slowly along the Avenue of the Dead. Dr. Mateo Cruz adjusted his wide-brimmed hat, his eyes scanning the colossal Pyramid of the Sun, not for its majesty, but for its seams. His research focused on construction phases, the telltale lines where one epoch's ambition had encased another's. Using drone-mounted LiDAR, his team had recently revealed a hidden layer of the pyramid, a smaller, earlier structure swallowed by the final monument. Each layer was a chapter in a lost history, a political statement buried under centuries of subsequent power. The work was slow, dusty, and profoundly reflective. The modern archaeologist was a detective in a world without witnesses, piecing together a narrative from the silent, stubborn physicality of things, the orientation of a wall, the chemistry of plaster, the distribution of obsidian flakes. These researchers, and hundreds like them across the globe, were the inheritors of the silent question. Their tools were satellites and spectrometers, not chisels and mud molds, but their goal was a form of translation, to understand the logic encoded in the stones. The theories they debated in conference halls and field tents were not mere academic exercises, but frameworks for empathy, attempts to bridge the vast cognitive gap between modern minds and ancient worldviews. The oldest and most tantalizing debate was that of diffusion versus independent invention. Did the pyramid forms spread from a single civilization, carried by forgotten seafarers or overland traders, or did it spring, like a geometric wildflower, from the separate soils of human consciousness whenever certain conditions were met? The diffusionist argument had a romantic allure, suggesting a connected ancient world. Proponents pointed to tantalizing, if tenuous, threads, similarities in certain glyphs, the presence of nicotine in Egyptian mummies, a New World plant, the sheer improbability of the same complex form arising repeatedly by chance. Yet the evidence on the ground whispered overwhelmingly of isolation. The pyramids of Egypt were solid, mostly internal tombs focused on a single individual's afterlife. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia were hollow, tiered temples for communal worship. The Mesoamerican pyramids were steep-stepped platforms for public ritual and astronomical observation. Their construction techniques, materials, and precise religious functions differed profoundly. The diffusion theory, for most archaeologists, felt like forcing a square peg into a round, deeply rooted hole. The consensus leaned heavily toward independent invention, a convergent evolution of architecture, where similar human challenges and aspirations yielded a similar, supremely logical solution. This led to the second major theoretical pillar, archetypal human psychology. Perhaps the pyramid was not an idea that traveled, but an idea that emerged inevitably from the human mind. Carl Jung's concept of archetypes, universal, primal symbols embedded in the collective unconscious, found a compelling case study in these structures. The mountain, as a natural form reaching from earth to sky, is a near-universal symbol of the sacred, the axis mundi. To build a mountain was to create a conduit to the divine. The triangle, the simplest stable geometric form, represents ascent, focus, and hierarchy. Psychologically, building upward is an act of aspiration, a physical manifestation of the human desire to transcend the mundane. The pyramid, then, could be seen as the materialization of a deep-seated psychic impulse, a form waiting to be discovered by any culture that sought to materially express its connection to the cosmos and its own social order. Complementing this was the theory of environmental and technological determinism. The form was a brilliant answer to specific limitations. How does a society with pre-industrial technology build something tall, impressive, and enduring? The answer, across continents, was the same. You build out to build up. A broad base distributes weight and allows the use of ramps for construction. The sloping sides provide stability against earthquakes and erosion. The pyramid is essentially a giant pile, the most fundamental method of creating height. Furthermore, in environments where stone or mud brick were the primary materials, the pyramidal shape was structurally sound. It was the perfect marriage of ambition and available means. When combined with the universal human observation of mountains as sacred high places, the practical solution became a spiritual one. The environment provided the materials and perhaps the inspiration, human ingenuity provided the technique, and the human psyche, yearning for the divine, provided the meaning. In the quiet of a dig-house laboratory at dusk, these theories felt less like competing ideas and more like different lenses through which to view the same profound mystery. Eleanor Vance examined a soil sample under a microscope, the particles illuminated like tiny planets. She thought of the workers' settlement unearthed near the Giza Plateau, with its evidence of healthcare and organized provisioning. This spoke of social organization, a theory of power and logistics. The precise cardinal alignment of the pyramid spoke of a celestial theory. The sheer repetitive labor spoke of a psychological drive for legacy. No single theory was sufficient. The truth, she suspected, was a tapestry woven from all these threads. The work was a lesson in humility. For every question answered, two more arose. The discovery of a new chamber in a pyramid with robotic cameras only deepened the mystery of its purpose. The precise dating of a construction phase at Teotihuacan refined the timeline but did not reveal the names or motivations of its rulers. The lingering puzzles were as much a part of the story as the solved ones. Why did some cultures, like the Moche, build primarily with adobe, while others used limestone or granite? Why did the pyramid form flourish and then fade in certain regions, replaced by other monumental forms like the Greek temple or the Gothic cathedral? The quiet dedication of the researchers was fueled not by the hope of a final, definitive answer, but by the value of the conversation itself, the slow, collective effort to listen more closely to the past. The reflective tone of this modern endeavor was one of respectful partnership with the ancients. The archaeologists were not masters uncovering secrets, but guests in a house built by others, trying to understand the rules of the home. They documented, preserved, and interpreted, aware that their own theories were products of their time, just as the pyramids were products of theirs. At the end of a long day, Mateo Cruz would often climb a nearby hill to look at Teotihuacan spread out in the valley, the pyramids darkening against the twilight. He saw not a puzzle to be solved, but a landscape of meaning. The stones held the intentions of thousands, the king's command, the priest's prayer, the laborer's sweat. His work was to acknowledge that complexity, to honor the specificity of each culture's choice, while still marveling at the beautiful, haunting echo that resonated between them. The echo in modern eyes was not a shout of discovery, but a low, persistent hum of wonder, refined by science but unchanged in its essence. The pyramids remained, as they always had, both crystal clear in their physical presence and utterly elusive in their full significance. The modern researcher, with brush and database, continued the ancient conversation, adding a new, careful layer of understanding, knowing that the final word on these stone mountains would never be written, and that perhaps in their enduring mystery lay their greatest gift. Asterisk. Asterisk. Chapter 10. A tapestry of threads. Asterisk. Asterisk. From the austere geometry of Giza to the painted terraces of the Moche, the pyramids of the world form a grand, disjointed tapestry. Each culture wove its own vibrant thread, local materials, distinct deities, unique purposes, into the fabric of this shared form. Viewed side by side, these structures present a paradox of breathtaking similarity and profound difference, a global chorus singing the same architectural note in languages utterly foreign to one another. To compare them is to deepen the mystery, to see not a single answer emerging, but a fascinating pattern of human creativity responding to universal prompts with brilliantly particular expressions. The most striking similarity is, of course, the form itself, the broad, stable base, the sloping sides, the ascent to a pointed or truncated apex. This shape is a triumph of primal engineering, the most logical way for early civilizations to build tall and enduring with simple technology. It is the shape of a mountain, nature's own monument, replicated in stone, mud brick and adobe. Yet within this shared geometry, the architectural styles diverge dramatically. The Egyptian pyramid is a study in monolithic purity, a smooth-sided, near-perfect geometric solid built from colossal limestone or granite blocks, designed to be a sealed, impenetrable whole. Its beauty is in its abstraction, its silent mathematical perfection against the empty desert. The Mesopotamian ziggurat, in contrast, is a layered, accessible sculpture. Built from millions of smaller, sun-dried or fired bricks, it is a terraced mountain, its sides broken by monumental staircases, its form meant to be climbed and its summit shrine occupied. It is not a solid mass but a staged platform, its texture rough, its presence more organic, rising from the mud of the river plain. The Mesoamerican pyramid, as at Tikal or Teotihuacan, shares the ziggurat's stepped profile, but with a different spirit, often built from rubble and earth, faced with cut limestone or stucco. These structures are steep, almost vertical stairways to the gods. Their summits are crowned not with small shrines, but with elaborate temple complexes, roof combs piercing the sky, their surfaces alive with sculpted masks and intricate murals. They are ornate, symbolic mountains, deeply integrated into urban plazas. The Moche pyramids of Peru present another variation, vast truncated platforms of adobe, their sides sloped and reinforced like massive earthen berms. They are less about vertical aspiration than horizontal dominance, broad stages for public spectacle, their power expressed in sheer sprawling volume rather than delicate height. Each style is a direct conversation with local environment and material. The abundant limestone of Egypt, the alluvial mud of Mesopotamia, the volcanic tuff and limestone of Mesoamerica, the desert clay of Peru. The purposes behind these forms reveal even deeper contrasts, wrapped around a core of similar intent to connect the human and the divine. The Egyptian pyramid had a singular, inward-focused purpose. It was a tomb and a resurrection machine for the god-king. Its entire design, the hidden chambers, the narrow shafts pointing to stars, the sealed portcullises, was to protect and propel a single royal soul into the afterlife. It was a private, albeit monumental vessel for immortality. The ziggurat served the opposite function. It was a public temple, the dwelling place of a deity, accessible only to priests. Its purpose was ongoing communion, not final entombment. It was a bridge for ritual, not a capsule for eternity. The community's relationship with the divine was maintained through continuous ceremony on its heights. In Mesoamerica, the pyramid temple blended these functions but with a different emphasis. While sometimes covering royal tombs, as at Palenque, their primary role was as a stage for cosmic and political theatre. They were astronomical observatories, altars for sacrifice, and platforms from which the living king, very much alive, demonstrated his divine mandate. The purpose was to sustain the cosmic order and display earthly power through recurring, often bloody ritual. The Moche pyramids similarly served as ceremonial stages, but their rituals were focused on fertility and the ocean, and their summits were not for public ascent, but for elite performance witnessed from below. They were instruments of social cohesion and elite authority, their purpose to enact myths that bound the community together under a shared terrifying cosmology. The contexts in which these pyramids were built further highlight their unique characters. Egypt's pyramids rose in a landscape of stark minimalist power. The endless desert and the narrow fertile ribbon of the Nile, they were statements of permanence in a land defined by cyclical renewal and vast empty spaces. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia stood at the hearts of densely populated, walled city-states in a flat, fertile plain, vulnerable to invasion and flood. They were assertions of divine order in a politically fragmented, environmentally unpredictable world. The Mayan pyramids erupted from the relentless green chaos of the jungle, their white limestone peaks symbolizing human order carved from natural disorder, centers of power in a landscape that constantly threatened to reclaim them. The Moche pyramids hugged a coastal desert, their adobe bricks mirroring the barren hills, their gaze fixed on the unpredictable Pacific, the source of both sustenance and terror. Each pyramid was a dialogue with its specific environment, a human-made answer to the challenges and inspirations of its place. Yet, for all these differences, the threads of similarity weave a compelling pattern. All pyramids served as focal points for immense social organization. All required the mobilization of economies, the development of advanced administrative skills, and the coordination of labor on a colossal scale. All functioned as symbols of centralized authority, making the abstract hierarchy of society concrete and visible. All, in some way, engaged with the cosmos, through alignment, symbolism or ritual, asserting a human place within a larger celestial order. All were expressions of a culture's highest values, its deepest fears, and its most ambitious aspirations, rendered in the most durable materials available. This tapestry, with its contrasting colors and textures, deepens the central mystery rather than solving it. The differences argue powerfully against simple diffusion. The similarities speak to something fundamental in the human creative spirit. It is as if different cultures pondering the same set of deep questions. How do we reach the divine? How do we embody our power? How do we make our mark on eternity? Arrived at a similar architectural solution independently, each tailoring it to their local spiritual, political, and environmental wardrobe. The pyramid emerges not as a copied idea, but as a discovered archetype, a form waiting in the collective toolkit of human ingenuity. To contemplate this global tapestry is to be invited into a state of quiet wonder. It is to see human creativity, not as a linear progression, but as a series of brilliant isolated flashes, all illuminating the same profound shape. The Egyptian tomb, the Mesopotamian temple, the Mayan observatory, the Moche stage, each is a unique masterpiece, yet each resonates with the others across continents and centuries. This resonance is the true mystery, a silent harmony in stone. It suggests that beneath the dazzling diversity of gods and kings, of rituals and materials, there lies a common human impulse to build a mountain where there is none, to create a point of contact between the earthly and the sublime, and to leave upon the skin of the world a permanent geometric signature of that yearning. The tapestry does not provide an answer to why this form, but it beautifully displays the myriad magnificent ways in which that why was answered. In the end, the comparison invites not a conclusion, but a deeper contemplation of the endlessly inventive, yet strangely unified spirit that, when gazing at a mountain or a star, feels compelled to build one of its own. Asterisk. Chapter 11. Why we build asterisk. The study was dark now, the last ember of daylight extinguished beyond the window. The map on the desk had vanished into the gloom, its dotted questions absorbed by the night. The historian did not rise to turn on a lamp. The darkness felt appropriate, a velvety counterpart to the vast spans of time just traversed in thought. The journey from Giza to Ura, from Tikal to the Moche valleys, had not been a search for a singular answer, but a pilgrimage through the many mansions of human aspiration. And now, in the quiet culmination, the only truth that seemed to hold was not a solution to the mystery, but a deeper understanding of its source. The pyramids, in all their glorious variety, were not puzzles to be solved, but profound questions posed in stone. Their shared form was the grammar of a universal human sentence, spoken in different languages but always expressing the same innate drives, to reach upwards, to commune with the divine, and to leave a mark that whispers, asterisk, we were here, asterisk. into the silent era of eternity. This upward reach is perhaps the most fundamental. To stand upright is the first human defiance of gravity. To build upward is its cultural extension. The pyramid is the architectural embodiment of this yearning. It begins with the broad, solid base of the earthly realm, the known world of soil, water, and daily toil. Then it ascends, narrowing, focusing, straining toward the apex, that infinitesimal point where earth touches sky. For the Egyptian, this was a literal stairway for the pharaoh's spirit. For the Mesopotamian priest, it was a climbable prayer. For the Mayan astronomer, it was an observation deck, bridging terrestrial and celestial cycles. The direction is always the same, away from the horizontal plane of survival, toward the vertical axis of transcendence. It is a physical manifestation of hope, a collective effort to lift the community's gaze and its very essence above the mundane. The mountain shape is no accident. It mimics the original altars created by geology, those natural spires that have always drawn the human eye and spirit heavenward. To build a mountain is to claim that sacred aspiration for oneself, to declare that the connection to the sublime is not a gift of nature alone, but an achievement of culture. Communion with the divine is the spiritual engine of this ascent. The pyramid was never merely a building, it was a conduit, a focal point, a battery for the sacred. In a world perceived as animated by capricious gods and cosmic forces, these structures served as stable points of contact. They concentrated diffuse spiritual energy into a single powerful locus. The precise alignments to Orion's belt, the solstice sun, the moon's path were not astronomical hobbies but essential wiring in this circuit. By aligning stone with star, the builders plugged their earthly concerns into the perceived power grid of the cosmos. The rituals performed upon them, whether the silent anointing of a sarcophagus or the public spectacle of a sacrifice, were acts of maintenance for this connection. They fed the gods with devotion, with beauty, with life force itself, in exchange for cosmic order, the Nile's flood, the seasonal rains, the sun's return. The pyramid made the intangible tangible. It gave a specific, climbable address to the gods, a place where the veil between worlds was thin, where whispers from below might be heard above, and where blessings from above might be channeled down to the waiting community below. It was an act of faith rendered in geometry, a prayer so fervent and sustained that it became a mountain. And then, the mark, the desire for legacy, to defy the erasing passage of time, is a profound human anxiety. Pyramids are the ultimate rebuttal to oblivion. They are declarations of identity carved into the very skin of the continent. For the pharaoh, it was personal immortality, a name and a glory meant to last as long as the sun. For the city-state of or the dynasty of Tikal, it was a statement of cultural permanence. Asterisk. Our gods are true, our king is mighty, our society is ordered and enduring. Asterisk. The choice of material, limestone, granite, fired brick, adobe, was a commitment to this endurance. These were not structures for a season, but for the ages. The labor required to build them was a societal investment in forever. Every citizen who contributed a brick, a season of labor, or a portion of their harvest was purchasing a share in this immortality. The pyramid was the collective signature of a civilization, a signature so bold and heavy it could not be washed away by flood, buried by sand, or swallowed by jungle. It was a message to the future, a deliberate seeding of wonder and question into the landscape, ensuring that even if their language was forgotten and their gods abandoned, their presence would never be ignored. The historian's reflections wove together the themes from the preceding chapters: the hands of the builders, the stars they followed, the power they served. These were not separate threads but strands of the same rope. The drive to reach upward mobilized the hands. The need for divine communion dictated the alignment with the stars. The hunger to leave a mark consolidated power and organized society into a machine capable of such a task. The pyramid was the point where psychology, spirituality, politics, and engineering converged. It was the most complex, simple thing humanity ever devised. And yet, the central tantalizing question, why this specific form, again and again remained, floating in the dark study, peacefully unanswered. The theories of independent invention, archetypal psychology, and environmental determinism were not competitors, but complementary lenses. Together, they formed a prism through which the white light of the mystery broke into its constituent colors. No single beam provided the full picture, but together they illuminated the shape of the human spirit that conceived it. The unanswered question was not a failure of scholarship, but its greatest success. It preserved the pyramid's essential gift, wonder. The historian finally stirred, a silhouette against the faint blue light of the snow-filled window. There was no frustration in this lack of a neat conclusion, only a serene acceptance. The mystery was the point. In a modern age addicted to data and definitive answers, the pyramids stand as majestic guardians of ambiguity. They remind us that some of the most important aspects of the human experience, faith, aspiration, the urge to create beauty, resist reduction to bullet points. They teach that to fully appreciate the past, one must sometimes relinquish the demand for complete comprehension and simply stand in awe. The journey through the silent questions of the stones had led here to a peaceful coexistence with not knowing. The historian's role was not that of a solver, but of a listener and a translator, humbly conveying the echoes of those ancient silences. The pyramids did not need to be solved to be understood. Their meaning lay in their enduring presence, in the sheer fact of their stubborn collective shout against entropy. They are the ultimate evidence that humanity, in all its disparate brilliance, has always shared a common dream: to touch the sky, to speak with the gods, and to etch a memory so deep in the earth that time itself stumbles over it. The wonder is not in the resolution, but in the persistent, beautiful asking of the question across the millennia. With a final, contented glance at the darkened map, the historian leaned back, the ancient stones silent in the night, their mystery not a wall, but an open door, and the acceptance of that mystery, not an end, but a profound and peaceful beginning.